Why, hello there, and welcome to this video. My name is Leah. I'm a new progressive YouTuber, and I have recently started doing Wednesday and Saturday shows where I talk about the big stories, cultural trends, and whatever else I feel like discussing so that I can try to use my political energy for good. This is the third and last segment of my show today, and we are going to be talking about something that I think is kind of important. It's a little bit less on the political side of things, it's more on the medical side of things, but sometimes this kind of news is big enough that I think that it's important to talk about. And especially when it's like really slow in the political side of things, like we don't really have a ton of crazy big news right now today in terms of like the political world and stuff like that. So I feel like there's room in my show for this kind of story today. And that's why it's here. This is sort of like two stories wrapped into one because one of these stories is a little bit older. And then the other story is a little bit newer. So we're starting with the older story. This one is pretty recent, but it's still, I would say, old. It's from May 9th. So it's pretty recent, but it's still a little bit of an older story compared to the other one we're going to be discussing. And to read the title, colon cancer rates have been rising for decades in younger people, study find. Researchers saw a sharp increase among teenagers, but noted that the overall number of cases in that age group are very low. So to go into the article here, colorectal cancer rates have been rising for decades among people too young for routine screening. Routine screening is recommended every 10 years, starting at age 45. The new study focused on rates of the disease in children and adults ages 10 to 44, using data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Cases of colorectal cancer were on the rise in all age groups, the researchers found. It means that there is a trend, said a doctor who led the research. We don't know what to make of it yet. It could be lifestyle factors or genetics, but there is a trend. So we're going to talk about it more, but based on what we've read so far and stuff, I'm not really sure what genetics could have to do with it. Like lifestyle factors make sense to me. Like I kind of understand that. Like, oh, it could be something in our diet or something like that. But genetics, like I don't really understand how, if we're seeing total number of cases go up in all age groups, then I don't really understand how that could point to genetics. So I'm not really sure what that means. I mean, obviously they don't really know what to make of it yet. That seems to be true, but yeah, I'm not sure about that. Despite the increases, the overall number of cases in people younger than 40 was still low, and people under age 30 cases remained exceedingly rare. But with such low rates to begin with, any increase can take on a larger significance. So we can look at like the total number of cases here, and what we're seeing is a 500% increase from 10 to 14-year-olds. We're seeing a 300% increase from 15 to 19-year-olds, and a 185% increase from 20 to 24-year-olds. The age group that is right below the routine screening age, those ages are 40 to 44, saw an increase of 45%. So as you can see from the numbers right here, the younger the age group, the higher the increase in the percentage of colorectal cancer. So we know this disease is age related. As you get older, you are more likely to develop polyps, and those polyps are more likely to develop into cancer. And then we have a statement over here that says doctors are still searching for answers as to why colorectal cancer cases are on the rise among younger generations, but the reason does not appear to be genetic, May said. There are a few cancers where we are now seeing an earlier onset, and they are probably linked. We don't know why, but I think what we all agree on is that it is probably something environmental over something genetic, she said, noting that it may be tied to more recently developed food processing methods or exposure to plastic. So personally, I find this kind of disturbing. This is definitely not good news. I'm sure many of us are aware that in our modern culture, we eat a lot of processed foods. Processed foods are a part of many people's diets nowadays. And if anything, it's actually pretty challenging to find food that isn't super duper over processed. On top of that, regulations are still not very good for companies and like what they do for like additives and stuff to the food, like preservatives, additives, all that kind of stuff. Even I saw recently there was a news article about pesticides having forever chemicals in them, which if you know anything about forever chemicals, PFAS, they are being banned around the world because they're incredibly toxic to people. And not only are they toxic, but like they kind of just like sit in your body forever. And we're not entirely sure what the long-term consequences of them are, but the fact that they are like almost impossible to filter out and they just kind of sit in your body forever. Like that's all pretty unsettling. Those are the things that they used for like non-stick pans and stuff like that. It's just like chemicals that are created to be incredibly durable and resistant to a lot of different kinds of methods of, breaking them down and stuff like that, which is why they're called forever chemicals. But yeah, apparently they were putting forever chemicals in pesticides on food, which is just like, that just feels like common sense. Like, I'm not sure you need to do a study on it to like realize how ridiculous that is. So I saw this news when it first broke and I was kind of like scared about it, to be totally honest with you. I think cancer is scary. And I know that we are closer than we have ever been to like coming up with like permanent solutions to cancer, curing cancer, whatever, beating it for good or whatever, or simply just improving the methods that we have to make them less taxing on the human body, to make them safer in general, maybe less expensive even. But even at the forefront of cancer research, cancer is still a scary word nowadays. I just think that it's still extremely scary for people because it's like the specter of death. Like cancer, many people have seen people go through cancer, and it's a rough thing, and not everyone makes it out of it, makes it out of treatment and stuff like that. So heck, some people don't even want treatment because they're not sure that fighting the cancer is even worth the pain that you have to go through to fight it. So the fact that there's a rise in cancer cases in all age groups, I find that to be pretty unsettling. The fact that it's young age groups that are getting the most significant increase, I find that to be more alarming. Now, of course, it's the younger age groups have less people like cases in general. So again, the bigger percent increase is because there's less cases in general. So having like a 500% increase on, 5 cases is not a monumental number of people, but it is a rather striking statistical difference. Personally, I feel like we're probably going to see that this is linked to forever chemicals or plastics or preservatives. It's got to be something that we're adding to our food, something synthetic, something that we're using in our food that we use in our processed foods. But that's just the first part of this story. So we're going to jump to the more recent story now that you get the backstory for this story. And here is some really good news, since I just gave you some anxiety about colorectal cancer. FDA approves blood test for colorectal cancer screening among average risk adults in the US. The maker of the test, Palo Alto, California-based biotechnology company Guardant Health, announced Monday that this is the first blood test to be approved by the FDA as a primary screening option for colorectal cancer, and it's the first approved blood screening test for colorectal cancer that meets the requirements for Medicare reimbursement. For patients with commercial insurance plans, the cost of the test may vary depending on their individual plan coverage. The list price for the test has not yet been announced. This is a promising step toward making more convenient tools available to detect colorectal cancer early while it is still more easily treated. In the United States, colorectal cancer is the second most common cause of cancer deaths, and this year, more than 53,000 people are expected to die from the disease, according to the American Cancer Society. But about 70% of colorectal cancer deaths can be prevented with increased screening. The test, called Shield, is expected to launch commercially within the week and will join other types of colon and rectal cancer screening methods, including colonoscopies and at-home stool tests, as options that healthcare providers can offer their patients. A simple blood test may be more convenient for some patients, while colonoscopies can feel invasive or at-home stool tests can feel awkward. So I'm not going to read any further because I feel like that pretty much lays out why this is such a big deal. We talked about how the rates of colon cancer are increasing, and having better screening methods, more diverse screening methods, more accessible screening methods is going to be an incredibly valuable thing for saving lives. I mean, we are talking, they said 70% of the people that are expected to die from colon cancer could have been saved if there had been better methods for early detection. Obviously, as we discussed, more research is needed to figure out like why the cases are going up in general, why we're seeing more cases of colon cancer. But it is really good to see that they're working on treatments and early detection methods, because that is such a big deal when it comes to cancer. The earlier you find it, the easier it is to treat, and the less stressful treatment is on the body. So yeah, I was very happy to see this news. Just doing a quick blood test could be a lot more convenient, and depending on the pricing structure and stuff like that, could even be covered by insurance more easily or something like that. The other options being colonoscopies, which aren't risk-free. A colonoscopy is not necessarily risk-free. Those come with inherent risks. You could get injured from a colonoscopy. It is extremely rare. It does not happen very often at all, and it is not an excuse to avoid one, but it can happen. So a blood test is actually safer than a colonoscopy. And the other option was a stool sample, which is kind of embarrassing for some people, and a lot of people kind of veer away from those kind of things. It's like, I don't really need it or whatever. But since this is a quick blood test, I feel like there's sort of like no excuse. You can just get it done. And yeah, it's also great to see that it's as accurate as other testing methods, so that you're not rolling the dice with like sort of like maybe an inconclusive test or something like that. But with that, that's going to bring us to the end of this story. I just wanted to talk about that because there is not a lot of other stuff for me to talk about, and I feel like like that's actually pretty big news. I feel like it's pretty big news to find out that, cancer rates are rising and also that we are finding better ways to deal with it. I'm curious to hear what the people at home think about the rates going up. What do you think it is causing it? Is it the microplastics? Is it forever chemicals? Is it something else that I can't even think of? Let me know what you think down in the comments. Make sure to hit the like button. I'm trying to push towards 100 subscribers. So if you would help me on that journey, that would mean a lot. I would super appreciate that. And with no further ado, I'm going to get out of here. I will be back on Saturday with another show, and I hope to see you there. But do me just one little tiny favor before we get out of here. I just really need you to drink some water.